health today is so complicated. Just being healthy or staying healthy is very complicated for some odd reason. I can't put my finger on it, but it's a difficult thing to navigate. And just when you think you're healthy, something ugly rears its head and kind of shows you maybe you're not the healthiest. Even when you're doing all the things, there's always more you could be doing to improve the quality of your life, quality of your physical health. Even physical health um, has its limitations. I just talked to a physician today. I had my physical, and she noticed my knees had have this problem. I think osteoporosis. So she's some pretty sophisticated term she used to describe the condition of my knees, and it's something I've been dealing with my whole life. It's from shin splints. Playing basketball on shin splints for years led to knee issues that she flat out told me. Sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. She just said, I'm just gonna leave it. I'm just gonna put it out there for you. You can't do anything about it. It's just gonna be a problem. But another thing we talked about that was very interesting is like sometimes human intervention in natural systems tends to do more harm than good, and I couldn't help but to agree with her on that, because nature or biology, um, you know, natural biology, biological systems, they have a way of course correcting, and nature does this on her own a lot, and it's like a course corrective adjustment, and like it's like a system within itself that nature provides for living things, or develops or learns, or whatever the case is. But um, you know your body learns to adapt, and sometimes like surgeries and all these things that we stick our nose where it doesn't belong, and we cut things open, and we kind of poke around places we don't really know what we're dealing with. Sometimes it can put you behind than it can really ahead. And so obviously there's a lot of things that I do for my knees to help. I mean, I transitioned to barefoot shoes um, early on, when they first came into the market. People, you would always see people like squatting or deadlifting barefoot, and you always wonder, like, well, maybe because they have better like foundational support, or better they have a you have better control, or a better way to exert force through your body, and so you're closer to the ground, you're in contact with the ground, and so it made me think, like, you know maybe that might be healthier for your foot development, is using it the way it was supposed to be used. And your feet and your toes are like the fingers in your hands. They're meant to be manipulated and to be used. And so the idea with the barefoot shoes is that it really teaches your body to use those muscles. Your foot is made up of 200 plus muscles. Um, and if they become, you know, fatigued, or if they lose their strength or their ability to function, I can only imagine how many different ways that can rear its ugly head later on in life. Where if your feet have low or no mobility, I could see it affecting your ankles. I could see stiff ankles affecting your knees. I could see knee issues affecting your hips, and I could see all that affecting your hamstrings, and then your low back. What's one of the most prescribed or prescribed medications, or what's one of the most common issues today? It's fucking it's it's low back issues, low back pain. The ancient yogis used to say, you're only as young as your spine is flexible. You're only as young as your spine is flexible, which means like the health of your spine ultimately determines like how well you live. And the less, the way I'm interpreting it anyways, like the less mobile you are, the less nimble you are in your body, the quicker you'll die, the faster you'll age. And that is so important, to stay nimble and loose. And because like we already store stress so much, like in our tissues, like we're our the mental stress can lead to physical tension. Negative thoughts can store themselves in your flesh, and like you can develop knots and tightness in areas where your nerves may cluster, or like bind together. And like, you know, my mom's always been stressed out, you know, maybe not her whole life, but like certain parts of life, like, and she would have these rock solid traps, like scary, and she doesn't lift, but it's because like all that tension, she's like constantly in a state of fear, or like fight or flight or stress. And like she was always shrugging, and so like her traps are like steel walls. And um that's a hard thing to kind of like fix. um uh but like managing health, um it's something that latest science and technology doesn't have all the answers for. They don't really understand completely. Nonetheless, they provide I wouldn't call solutions, but these institutions, these people of power, these authoritative figures, these people who want to they say they want to help, or keep you, um, get you feeling back to normal again, or improve the quality of your life. The truth is, if we weren't so sick, they wouldn't have a profession that they can practice. Um, and if there's no demand in a practice, ultimately there's no other use for that practice. So, what I'm saying is, your illness, there are industries that depend on your illness. Health, staying healthy, free from all ailments, let's say, uh, that's not necessarily a profit rich environment for people in certain practices. People, and there's cases where like people need, like, we need these professionals, doctors, and we need these people in these positions. um we need them, we do, for serious situations. But like for the for the ill for the illness issues that we have today, there's a lot that's avoidable. And things are being prescribed as a solution when really they're just like a prison almost, where if they provide you with a medication that you need to stay on, let's say for low back pain, um, Valium or like some heavy sedative opiate, um, that's an encouraged practice to prescribe heavily addictive substances for back pain. But like if we go back and we just look at what we just talked about, maybe if we start strengthening the smaller muscles that work in tandem with all the other functions of your body, maybe we can get rid of the back pain without the use of the prescriptions at all. During COVID and during the pandemic, in the United States, in the early months of the pandemic, February and March of 2020, there was a 21% increase in the number of antidepressant prescriptions in this country. 21% increase in the number of antidepressants in this country. 21% increase in 2 months. In 2 months, we've had almost a quarter of the population get prescribed medication to feel better. To feel better. This comes down to an issue of like how we're living. If we don't feel good, it goes back to nature having its own systems of offsetting dysregulation. I believe nature can regulate itself, and it has been way before we've ever been here as humans. But like mankind comes stomping through the jungle, and like all of a sudden we have this God complex where we can fix everything. But the truth is, sometimes we just got to let nature take its course, and there are methods that nature has that can change the way you feel. And it doesn't always have to come from a man-made prescription. Overall, the monthly antidepressant prescription rates increased by 63.5% from 2020 to 2022 compared to pre-pandemic levels. So in 2 years, 63% increase in antidepressant prescriptions in this country. If you look at underdeveloped nations, countries that have less than we do here in the West, the U.S., Ohio to be exact, Ohio State fans, nod to you, hats off, loyal fans, but I don't watch, but yeah, in lesser developed countries where they have less things, health statistics show that people are healthier physically in underdeveloped countries. That's a weird thing. That's so weird. But like we live in a world where like corporations that there's big food and big pharma. Somehow you follow this money trail up to the top, and they both converge. Two completely. We're talking about food, and then we're talking about health or medical. Two completely different things, but if you follow the money trail, you'll find that they both lead to the same road. The two roads come to a highway, so to say. It comes to one person. There's one, not it's necessarily a person, but it all comes to the same source. It's a genius tactic, though, isn't it? Like, take mass-produced food over a certain amount of years, enough processed food fed to a generation, for a certain amount of time, enough of those, incredibly toxic, waste like material that's been transformed, relabeled, put some color, tie dye colors in, turns into food. Um, Now, over some time, there's symptoms that are developed from eating junk all the time. And so now you've created a whole new industry around hormone control because the sugar in the food supply has dysregulated our nervous system and our hormonal health. And so now now you have this great new business opportunity, business venture, let's call it. And let's let's fill the power vacuum. You create a vacuum where now you need to that's where big pharma comes in. So you make people sick with the food supply, and then you know prescribe them, you diagnose them with your own model of health, which is funded by the food industry. In the 50s, um, the sugar companies paid scientists to eschew the data uh, on saturated fat and sugar, and so everyone blames saturated animal fats of being the leading problem with health, when it was the sugar when it was the sugar in the food that they were adding, which makes it addictive. That sweet kick, you may not notice it, but like sugar makes you crave more sugar. So like you just fucking fill up all the processed foods as you can with sugar, and people are gonna buy it. They're gonna buy more of it because they just want more of it. And so they they changed the data, they changed the information, and they're allowed to. Somehow they're allowed to do it. We don't pay much attention to it because we're too focused on a lot of our own shit. But they changed the data. They changed the data, and that's not cool. That's not cool at all. They lied. They lied to us. Sugar Industry Trade Group, aka Sugar Research Foundation, paid Harvard researchers in the mid 1960s to conduct Project 226, a literature review on diet and heart disease. So this is where it goes. Okay, heart disease. Okay, so we have a sugar company, and we have Harvard researchers. We're talking like scientists, bright minds, people with, you would think morality. But like the funny thing is with morality is that IQ, this is a true fact. You can look this up. IQ is not correlated with morality. So what that means is like, you know, just because someone is smart or the top of their skill or the top of their trade or brighter than the average tool and toolbox, it doesn't always mean that they're going to be that they're it's like intelligence is not correlated with good ethical behavior. So this is where you can get literally psychotic maniacs in high positions of power, and they know how to do it, and they know how to be persuasive, they know how to be charming, they know how to you know they know how to buy your trust because they know what you're looking for, and they exploit that. So we have Harvard researchers, big sugar, big food. In the mid 1960s, they conducted a literature review on diet and heart disease. The researchers produced a review published in the New England Journal of Medicine that concluded reducing dietary cholesterol and saturated fats would prevent heart disease while downplaying the evidence about sugar's role. The industry funding and involvement were not disclosed in that publication. Disclosure standards at the time were weak. The review influenced decades of nutrition science, public health guidelines, and popular beliefs about saturated fat and heart disease. Later research indicates that sugar and refined carbs also play a significant role in cardiovascular risk, but this wasn't widely emphasized until much later. Heart attacks, health issues. Again, we're a developed nation. We have the tools, resources, ability, capability. We have everything we could have ever asked for at our fingertips. I mean, it's amazing. Like we have everything we need to stay alive. The extra seems to be killing us. You know, the extra frosting on the donut or the extra fucking slice of cake at the wedding. Um, or the too busy in the morning McDonald's run, or the too busy in the afternoon KFC run, or like the too busy to cook for yourself, or too busy to clean, or too busy to work, exercise, too busy to focus on the quality of your life. You can see, you can see here where Dr. Weston Price, renowned dentist known for his research on the the molars of the jaws of people living in different continents and how their teeth developed with their food supply. Um, and in places where there's like tribes, like native tribes and people who still live in a very tribal community, he noticed you know, denser jaw bones, thicker jaw muscles, like healthier jaws, which led to, you know, a different face contour, um, different tooth health. What he found significantly shocking was vitamin K2, which is a vitamin that's derived from, you know, grass fed animals, particularly grass fed, because the way they digest plants that have been, you know, in contact with direct sunlight, um, that energy powerhouse, the sunlight, which the plants and the grass transform into matter. When animals feed on that, it you know, develops a unique molecular structure, nutritional profile that when animals eat it, you can't really replace it. You can't grow that in a lab. You know, Bill Gates, shout out to Bill Gates and his bright wisdom on food and health, because he's a computer scientist talking about health during the pandemic. Bravo. Yeah, Bill Gates, he wants to grow meat in a lab as if that will save the population. He talks a lot about saving. He's a big proponent of saving mankind, you know, with his virus, his talks about viruses, his talks about health. As a computer scientist, as a man who has developed Microsoft, the most commonly used computer software system in the world, talking about saving mankind. And here I am, not a doctor, this is not medical advice. I'm also talking about the health of human beings. But I'm oddly suspicious of what a computer scientist has anything to do with lab grown meat and the functions of nature. Because nature and its systems are completely irreplaceable in my eyes. I mean, the force of nature is not something. There's no aspects like of nature where man can recreate every single condition. I mean, we can splice genes in a lab. We can molecularly, we can manipulate genetically different molecules. We can um, genetically modify organisms. We can change corn crops. We can do a lot of things, but we can't do everything that nature does. Nature has its own formulas of course correction and adaptation, and like, I'm not a professional in this. I don't know if anybody practices this in a legit sense, with science being as nuanced as it is, but it's a scientific study, nature, and there's got to be some mysticism, in nature. This kind of like, the unexplainable parts of nature, we just kind of chalk up to being exactly what it is. Just, it's a mystery. There's a magic to it. There's nothing that we have intellectually or physically that can help decode some of nature's most complicated forms of expression. But one thing's for sure is that the process that you get from a grass-fed animal who roams this creature roams a patch of grass, and the grass is, through the environment, grows into into matter with the sun's energy, and the environment itself outside of chemical use, and this cow feeding on this kind of food is profoundly different in its nutritional profile than anything that Mr. Gates would grow in a laboratory. There's CRISPR gene editing, there's mRNA vaccines, and like all these things of technology. They have their place, they have their uses. I'm not a pro. Do not take any of this as medical advice or life guidance. This is just reflection based on my experience. My curiosity is expanding, and my opinion, and it's not a diagnosis for anybody. But these systems of like, we have our place, but when we start to try to replace nature with our intervention, so things get really squirrely. That's where you start getting characters like RFK Jr. that need to, address a weird coalition where, a weird correlation where the introduction of vaccines into a society, as the vaccine introduction went up, the rates of other diseases also went up. So there was obviously something genetically not working with some parts of the population based on human intervention, which were the vaccines, and they've saved lives, and they do have their place. But not everything is black and white. If there's one thing we know about this world, is like, not everything is just black and white, and business kind of relies on that, right? It's either this or that. You need to make decisions now. You need to, collect the next paycheck. You need to close quarter four's yearly earnings. You need to do things quickly in business, and you need to make a model. You need to predict things. You need to be predictive with your business. So black and white terminology, it's quite simple, and it's fairly quick. When you have a garden, there's certain insects that come attack your garden, even animals, predators that come, ravage the food that you're growing for yourself. If you have one little introduction of some other species, some other animal, some other insect can offset some other creature, insect, or animal that is feeding on your plants. Like if you have a Japanese, if you have some kind of, issue with, termites feasting on your crops, or a Japanese beetle problem, you can introduce a specific insect that will offset the damage. And that, so nature has its own damage control systems, is what I'm trying to get to. And that's what parasites really are, I guess, designed for. It's parasites and these things that work around death. Like there's a system around death and decay. Like corpses on the forest floor are reused and consumed by the forest. Nothing in nature is wasted. There's many there's self conservation. There's many self conserving methods nature has that have been working just fine without humans for so long, millions of years, for so long. What we need to do is learn how to be more involved in. Actually, I take that back. We need to learn how to be less involved in sticking our nose in places where it doesn't belong. Food can be medicine. The properly put together herbs and spices can cure your ailments. Fermented foods, raw milk from a healthy cow that was feeding on grass for all of its life. These like nutrient dense foods, it's what keeps us human. But with the soul and desire and all this other intangible things that come with being human, we forget what it's like, reality. We're sheltered. We have comfort from harm most of our lives. We're physically protected from harm all the time. Nature's cold, harsh cold, or harsh heat, or weather and bad weather. We're safe for most of our lives. Comfort is almost guaranteed in the West. And that also does something. Nature, the way survival of the fittest works in nature is like you have to be the fittest to survive. And that's, for the longest time, natural selection. That's what it was all about, was just, fitness levels between creatures. And the weak ones are taken out by parasites and disease and virus. And that's what these things are. They're kind of like nature's cleanup crew, maggots and flies and, sickness and disease. They kind of, they rot away and decay whatever is left that doesn't have the strength to, keep up the fight. So like all these things, I hate flies are the worst thing for me. Like I really could go without them existing, but they have a purpose here too. Like every piece of matter, every creature, every living thing has some kind of a purpose, some kind of an impact on the world around us, in your life directly or indirectly. Every particle that you interact with, some say was meant to always happen, some say was always going to happen, but what's happened has happened. you know. My knees, what's happened to them has happened. The only way forward is, uh, you know, there's no changing what they are. Um, I'm just thankful to have some of it. Some of it working. I was talking to a gentleman in the gym yesterday, and he has a genetic disease, and he was telling me how hard it is for him to get up every day and work out. Um, and also, he was telling me how many different entitlement reasons people have to not work out, or reasons why they deserve easier trials or whatnot. And he was expressing how little he cared for those pieces of input, because he's in agony most of the time. He has a genetic disease with his stomach, with his intestines, and can't quite remember exactly all of his issues, but he's in the gym every time I am, and I don't have the agony that he has, but he's in there. He has willpower. He wants to keep living. Uh, there's people with so much less than we have that have so much more fire in their belly than even me, and I have, I'm fortunate and blessed to have more than some. And some of these people who have way less, they show so much more courage, so much more passion for life, and it makes you wonder, like, even with difficulty straining somebody, nature, always has a way. There's always a way in nature. There's always a cure in nature. Um, you can call nature God. Um, I mean, all systems are governed, right, by God. That's the idea. Um, Nature. That's the best word we have for the forces at B. The forces that govern this odd world that we live in. That's the best word we can come up with, is nature. In ancient Chinese, they call it qi. You know, qi, which translates to life energy or force energy, like energy, like for like. So that might be a little better explanation, but I don't really think you need that antidepressant. I really don't think you need it, because medical, like, prescriptions have a cost. Like, they may relieve you of something, but they take something from you. And so when you're taking antidepressants, like, even that word, anti-depressed, um, obviously all the things we feel, it's whether it's depression, anxiety, fear, anger, this is feedback from the world, from within ourselves. It's information. Whatever triggers those things, it's that's information that can be studied. And so, like, if you're depressed, that's a completely, and like I am too. Like, it doesn't. No one's to say, like, I'm not immune to these issues. So, like, maybe I speak as if maybe I'm the way I'm talking about it. Maybe it seems like, oh, it's an easy thing to do, or it's simple, or no. I would. That's the last thing I want to get across. Is let's that this shouldn't have an effect, because it does. But at the end of the day, you know, the information that you get from being depressed, like these things that you can study and look into, you most of the time will have the answers for why you're angry or depressed, but it's not always the answer that you want to hear. So you have to be honest. You have to you have to change the way you interact with lower traits, quality, like lower personality traits, because it's normal. Like, there's bad traits in everybody, but that doesn't mean that they're just bad. It doesn't mean that they're incapable. There are maniacs out there. There are psychopaths. There are, but that's their problem. That's not your problem. And you don't need to be like them. You don't need to. You can try to help them. You don't. And the last thing we should be the last thing we should be doing is not helping them. We should be helping them. But you also have to know what you're dealing with. But you can't be scared of them, because at the end of the day, you're capable of just as much harm as they are, and that's just the truth. But whatever happened to them didn't happen to you, and whatever did happen to them led them there. So it's not fair to just say and rule them out that they're helpless, or that they're different, or they're subhuman or below human, because they're not. That's the truth, and that's a hard truth. But a lot of the medical training that professionals receive today in the West are directed towards a prescription based lifestyle, sedentary lifestyle, instead of encouragement of physical exercise and exposure to nature, from which we came. Including aspects of nature into our health and life is crucial. Studies can explain this, but some experts still disregard it or are not educated about it. Most of the things you can do to manage mental and physical health does not require a form of payment or purchase. This fundamental fact seems to be a conflict of interest in the medical industry, which becomes extremely profitable in relationship to spikes in diseases, or, for example, a global pandemic. We live in relatively stable times in terms of survivability. There is no excuse for being unhealthy, though. Like, the fact that we live in times of maximum survivability chance should be your reason not to be unhealthy. But again, health does not always come from lack of resources. You could be healthy with nothing. I mean, people in third world countries are healthier than us, for crying out loud. How is that even possible? How do you even wrap your mind around that? Like, that's crazy. Somebody with a six-figure salary in a beautiful home in a beautiful family has more health issues and chances of mortality than a guy living in a mud hut in the desert. The guy in the mud hut doesn't have diabetes. The guy with the six-figure salary with the home on the hills in California has cancer, autoimmunity, obesity, diabetes. If you do not make time for your fitness, you will be forced to make time for your illness. We have all the information we need to determine what makes good health. So why are we diluting it so much? Why is it so complicated to be healthy? What is the problem with health? I don't know. But I'm trying, Ringo. I'm trying to figure out what the problem is. I'm trying. I'm dying, Maximus. Why are we so unhealthy? If it's not physically, then it's mentally. Mental health issues, mental health awareness. These are things. Coin terms and catchphrases the internet has picked up. Um, which now the internet almost turns into a part of nature itself too, because um, the internet is a medium of connection and communication between humans across the globe, across the continent, across the ocean. And so you have all this information, human input, human interaction with a system developed outside of nature. But it has its own nature. The internet has its own life to it. And it's every day there's either a new trend or a new focus point or a new idea, and then things pick up steam, some things die, and it's just the way the law of the jungle is. But we have everything we need to stay healthy, so like I don't think we're missing anything for health. um but maybe we're there's too much. Sometimes there's even too much information. uh According to a study in the Journal of American Medical Association, the obesity rate among adult Americans was estimated at 32.2% among men, with women taking the lead at 35.5. These rates were unfortunately confirmed again by the CDC in 2008-2009. The answers you are looking for are not in those pills. They're not at the bottom of that pill bottle. They're not at the bottom of that booze bottle. They're not at the bottom of anything physical, but actually inside of you. Great song by Immortal Technique. What makes you think you'll find what you're looking for if it's not within you already? If you'd like to support the channel, you can visit preciseperformance.org, and you can pick yourself up a shirt or piece of apparel that emphasizes the message here today, and some motivational content that also can be found on that website, as well as the rest of these episodes you can find on the website. Support the channel by visiting our sponsor, Sagaro Shoes. With the coupon code, you can receive 15% off your purchase of barefoot shoes. You can start at a relatively decent budget, being open minded to an idea that may take some adjustment. These shoes are different. They're very thin. They keep you low to the ground, and they don't provide protection. So if something drops on your foot, you will get hurt. But they provide mobility. They provide flexibility. They allow your toes to work the way toes were designed to work, the way nature, the way God intended. A lot of people talking about God forget about nature. Let's include it all in this podcast. Like let's why not? Let's include everyone. Um, and you can also get yourself some tallow. Some beef fat with honey. It's a balm that you use on your hands and face. Van Man tallow and honey balm. I use it myself personally. It's amazing. It's the best thing for my skin and for my face. I actually feel like my body is like using it. It's not. It doesn't just wipe off like with a towel. Like you absorb it, and I've my acne issues have gone away. Dry skin. It's always great for dry skin. But importantly, it feeds your skin. And so, Van Man Honey and Tallow Balm, Sagaro shoes, barefoot shoes. I wear them every day. I have a pair. I have two pairs. We are taught and conditioned to take the standard commercial way of life that leads to disease, medication, and antidepressants to manage an uncontrollable spiral of ill-informed choices. Thank you for watching, and until next time, break the ice, stay frosty. I'm not a pro. Do not take any of this as medical advice or life guidance. This is just reflection based on my experience, my curiosity is expanding, and my opinion. And it's not a diagnosis for anybody.